Hello and welcome to a new video. My name's Courtney. If you're new here, I like to read and talk about books, and today we are doing my February wrap up finally. I know I'm late. I was doing other videos and those should be up by now, so go check those out to have a reading vlog, my March TBR. But now we're gonna backtrack and we're gonna go back to February and we're gonna go through in order every book that I read and what I rated it, what I thought about it, probably give you some stats as well. Keep in mind, a lot of these, you can't see them, but they're over here. A lot of these books I have already talked about pretty in depth in vlogs. So I would say about 6 out of these books, like 6 out of 9, I have talked about in reading vlogs. So I would love to know, do you think it's redundant to still do a wrap up if I've already talked about these in vlogs? Or do you guys like the wrap-ups anyways? Would love to know, that would help me out a lot. Because I have thought about not doing wrap-ups if I'm reading most of the books in vlogs. Just seems a little bit redundant. But again, maybe there are people who only watch the wrap-ups. So grab a coffee or a tea or a fun beverage and let's sit here and talk about all of the books that I read in February. First off, as usual, let's start with the stats from my reading journal. So in the month of February, I read a total of 9 books. I read about 4,575 pages, give or take. 4 of those I read physically. 5 of them I read on my Kindle, but probably also owned them physically. I actually didn't have any audiobooks this month. And then as far as genres go, I read 4 fantasy and 5 romance. I didn't break them down this time into YA versus like not YA, because a couple YA romances that I read didn't really feel YA, so I just put them in the romance category. But let's get right into it. Without further ado, the first book that we went into February finishing up was Vows and Ruins by Helen Shorer. This is book 2 in the Legends of Thesmar series, and this follows Althea Zoltaire, and in the first book, she is kind of like training in secret to be a warrior. Women in her world are not allowed to wield blades because there is a prophecy. This says basically the world's gonna end, bad things are gonna happen if women are wielding blades, which I know, stupid. She kind of is like, we're not doing that. We're not gonna go by those rules. And of course, along the way, she meets a legend, a warrior, and his name is Wilder. And you kind of follow the beginning of their story in book 1. And book 2, what are my thoughts on this? Book 2 felt a little bit flat for me. It felt a little bit more like, I don't want to say a filler book, I hate saying that, but it almost kind of did feel like that. There was a lot of repetitiveness, a lot of back and forth between the characters. They kept saying like, oh, we can't be together, but then, you know, 2 pages later, like they're together. So I don't know. That kind of frustrated me. Also, I think that at the time that I was reading this, I think I was in a little bit of a reading slump. I think I had been reading a lot of romantasy, and so therefore I needed something different, but I proceeded to go right into this book anyway, and I think that might have affected my views on this book. But I have heard that as the series goes on that it gets better and better, so I am planning to continue. And yeah, I rated this, I think it was like a 3.75/4 out of 5 stars. So I do still love the series. I do still recommend the series. It's really fun. I just think that, I don't know, I think that I needed to read this at a different time, and or maybe I just don't prefer this one as much as the first one. So I'm excited to see my feelings on the rest of the series, but this is what we went into February starting. Directly after that, again, because I needed something different, I picked up Consider Me by Becca Mack. This is a hockey romance, and I'm gonna tell you right now, I DNF'd this, guys. I DNF'd this, like, I don't even know. I think I was like 200 pages in, which that's big for me. DNFing when I'm like halfway through a book, I just couldn't do it. To me, it was so cringy and kind of like juvenile. I don't know, like the things that this main male character was saying, what is his name? Carter Beckett. Some of the things he was saying were just like so goofy silly that it was almost over the top to me, and maybe that's like what this was meant to be. I know a lot of people love this book, so if you're one of those people, just take this with a grain of salt. This is just my opinion. I feel like everyone's opinions are valid, but I just couldn't do it, guys. I cringed me out so hard, and that's really all I have to say about this. So yeah, we started off the month strong with a DNF. And then things started to look up because, as we all know, Deep End by Ali Hazelwood came out in the beginning of February, and I had to read it immediately. I didn't initially plan on reading it immediately, but I did anyway. And I kind of kind of read this and also listened to part of the audiobook, which I showed in a vlog, and I love the person that voiced Lucas's voice. And this follows Scarlett Vandermeer and Lucas Blomquist. Hopefully I'm saying that right. Can't seem to get it right. They both go to Stanford. She is a swimmer and she is a diver and he is a swimmer. And so they kind of cross paths every now and then. She is really struggling with diving. She had like an accident that she's trying to kind of recover from. She's going to therapy to get over the mental block that is preventing her from doing well in her diving career. So you kind of have that aspect. You do get a lot of like insight, I feel like, into the college world of sports when it comes to like the diving and stuff. So that part was really, really fun. There was also a best friend, and she's in this a lot. And I've heard a lot of people complain about how much the best friend is in this and how much they didn't like her. And I will say, I also, like, I agree with that. I didn't love her in this, but I also wasn't so put off by it that I didn't like the book. Like, I loved this book. I thought it was very spicy at an Allie Hazelwood level. So it's not like, you know, there's like different kinds of spicy books. This isn't one of those like crazy spicy books, but it's got an Allie Hazelwood level of open door spice in it. So do with that what you will. The whole plot of this is really just these two have similar sexual proclivities, and so the best friend is kind of like, oh my god, you guys should maybe explore that. And she's also the ex, so that's kind of like a little interesting. Again, that didn't affect my enjoyment of it. I still really loved their connection. I thought they had great chemistry. I love, as usual, Allie Hazelwood's witty, funny, very smart writing. Like, I think I said this in my vlog. Her writing is just, she's a smart lady, and it shows. So anyway, that's this book. Again, I did read this in a vlog, so if you want my more in-depth thoughts, go check that vlog out. But I did rate this, rated it 5 stars, duh. 5 stars. I think this might be actually one of my favorite Allie Hazelwood books ever, so we loved her. And I ordered a special edition of this as well before I knew that I loved it, but like I knew I was gonna love it. The next book that I picked up was Magnolia Parks Into the Dark. I was actually kind of reading this and Deep End kind of like intertwined. Again, read this in that same vlog, and this, my heart. This was such a great conclusion to BJ and Magnolia's story. Now, Jessa Hastings, I believe, has said that there are more books coming out, but they're going to be Daisy Hayes books. And I've always considered myself more of a Daisy Hayes girly than a Magnolia girly, but she grows on you. She really does. And I would say out of all the Magnolia Parks books, this one is for sure my favorite. I cried, obviously. This is a very hard book. Like, these characters do go through a lot. Their relationship starts out, you know, in the first book very toxic. You find out some things. I'm not gonna spoil anything, but you find out some things and their behavior starts to make a little bit more sense to you. It doesn't excuse the things that specifically BJ has done, but it kind of does give you an insight into their heads a little bit. And wow, I just had a great time with this. As always, Jessa Hastings' writing is just so eloquent, so beautiful. Like, I always get the absolute best quotes out of these books. She just has a way with words that's completely different from pretty much any other author I've ever read. It's like, I don't know how to explain it. The analogies that she uses, wow. I did rate this 5 stars. Had an amazing time with it. I don't know how much I can say because this is, you know, a later book in the series. Because it's been a little bit since I've read this, I kind of forgot, but this book places a very large emphasis on grief. It's hard to read, you know, in first person, and the way it really shows how grief can wreak havoc on every part of your life and just completely turn you into a different person who views the world differently. These experiences obviously have made these characters grow up and mature, and it was really unfortunate the way that it came about, but it was really nice to see them kind of just growing up and really taking more responsibility for themselves, and seeing them finally come together and have a less toxic relationship, which is all we've ever really wanted for BJ and Magnolia. And that's, again, all I'm going to say about this one. If you want my in the moment super in-depth thoughts, I believe I chat a lot about this one in the reading vlog that I mentioned. Again, I will try to link those reading vlogs in the description if you would like to go watch those. After that, I started another reading vlog, a separate reading vlog, in which I don't know which one I started with, but we're just going to say it was The Final Empire. So next I picked up The Final Empire by Brandon Sanderson. This is one that I have been putting off for such a long time, just because I'm intimidated. I don't read a lot of male authors. Don't know why, just usually don't. And I've heard so many good things about Brandon Sanderson. Obviously, like, he's like a king of fantasy. For some reason I just kept putting these off, and I don't know why, because this was less intimidating than I thought and also more enjoyable than I anticipated. This book follows two different characters. There's Kelsier and then, what is her name? And Vin, and they live in this world that is not good. The Lord Ruler has ruled for 1,000 years. The Ska are placed under that rule, and they are not viewed as human. They're not treated as such. They're basically slaves to the Empire. And so, obviously, people start getting really fed up with this, and so they decide to start a rebellion, but that is headed by Kelsier. Kelsier is this really charismatic character, and sometimes you're not really sure like what his motivations are. He also really grows on you because he's just very smiley, very bubbly. Loved that about him. And the coolest thing about this book is that the magic system is very unique. It is all based on allomancy, so different metals do different things, and you really see them throughout this use allomancy, especially Vin. Like, Kelsier's kind of training, he's like a mentor to Vin. He's training her in the ways of allomancy, which I love a good training montage. That's gonna get me every single time. Basically, I would say my favorite part of this book was watching Vin's character growth. She was my favorite POV in this, just because she got to go to like royal balls and things like that, and that is a setting that will always intrigue me, and always has. So you get to see a lot of that in here, which is really, really fun. And like I said, her character growth is really fun to watch. She starts out as, you know, a girl who's, I don't know if she's, I can't remember if she's like a thief, but she doesn't trust anyone. Her brother, her entire life, she's grown up taught not to trust anyone. So she's very distrustful of Kelsier and the relationships that she sees him having. She's like, there's no way that, you know, these people actually trust each other, because I've been taught not to trust anyone ever, and that it's every man or woman for themselves. So to see her kind of slowly start to trust this gang of unlikely friends, I guess you could say, is really fun to watch. It's really fun to watch her start to place her trust in anyone. Literally anyone. I did end up rating this a 4.25 out of 5 stars. I didn't quite get the 5-star feeling, but it was also super enjoyable to me. One of my favorites that I read in February. And I would say the only reason I didn't give it a higher rating than that would be because there was a little bit of a slow part in the middle, but also I was definitely finding myself kind of confused at different parts, especially, again, I go over this a lot in that reading blog where I read this, but there's a lot for me of confusion over the whole steel pushing, iron pulling, and how that kind of works, and kind of picturing that in my mind during the action scenes was a little bit, you know, taking me out of the story. I mean, I do think Brandon Sanderson does a good job of kind of going over and over and over the magic system until you kind of are forced to get it, but there's still aspects of it that were so like different that I couldn't really, I don't know, I feel like I was picturing it oddly. That's this book. 4.25 stars, really fun, really enjoyed it, definitely going to continue, and I'm actually really excited to continue this series. Okay, so the next book I picked up in February was First Time Caller by B.K. Borison. This is one that I kind of randomly picked up because the cover, because hello. This is one of the most beautiful and most Valentine-y covers I've ever seen, so I had to have it. And this book follows Lucy and Aiden Valentine. And Aiden is the host of a romance hotline in Baltimore. I almost said Boston. He hosts a radio hotline in Baltimore, and ironically enough, he no longer really believes in love. And then you also have Lucy, who has kind of, not that she doesn't believe in love, it's almost like she believes in it too much, and she's kind of waiting for the perfect man to just drop in her lap, which she's not putting herself out there, so obviously it's not really, it doesn't usually happen that way, right? So you have Lucy, who kind of has these high expectations but doesn't really believe that those are going to be met. And then you have Aiden, who has just had so many people, different kinds of people calling into the hotline who are really not having a great time in their relationships. And so they kind of call him and vent to him about their relationships. And so he's kind of become a little bit jaded about love over time and kind of also fallen out of love with his job because of this. So you have this really unique meet cute where Lucy's younger daughter, I think she's like, I don't know, 12 or 13, calls into this hotline because she's really worried about her mom and thinks that she's lonely and wants her mom to find love and find someone outside of her little bubble that she keeps herself in. So the little girl calls into the hotline and speaks to Aiden, and then things ensue from there, and she ends up going on the radio show because you can tell you're gonna get some forced proximity. And this book was so deeply romantic, and I said this in my vlog as well. It's like, duh, obviously it's gonna be romantic, it's a romance, but I mean that this was like deeply romantic. This was based on the movie Sleepless in Seattle, or like kind of inspired by that, which is also obviously a very romantic movie. I just loved the vibes. This book had very strong vibes. Like I said, very, very romantic. This is like the pinnacle to me of like a feel-good romance. I just had the best time reading it the entire time I was reading it, and so I rated it 5 stars. I do highly recommend checking this one out if you haven't already. I wasn't sure when I first saw that this was coming out by BK Boris, and I wasn't sure if I was going to pick it up because I've also read one of the books in the Love Late Farm series and just wasn't for me. I didn't really have a connection to the characters, but this one, I loved this. This was everything. This was, again, 5 stars. Highly recommend checking it out. Again, if you want more thoughts, go check out my other reading blog. After that I think was the end of that reading blog. I picked up A Kiss of Iron, which I kind of switched my reversible dust jacket around, so that's why it looks different than you probably saw it before. I had kind of mixed opinions on this one. I flew through it, I enjoyed it. It follows Kat and Bastian, and they live in kind of like a Regency era world where she is kind of part of the upper class, but she's fallen, she's come into bad times, she has no money, so she's trying to find ways to make money, and she does so by becoming this other persona that goes out at night and kind of, she's basically a thief. Like a thief in the night. They ride these like saber cats, which I thought was really cool and really unique. And of course she comes across this dangerous, handsome fae male who becomes important later on, but she gets a letter, essentially brings her to the court, and she gets summoned to court. She has to live there to serve the queen, and there's a lot of secrets and twists and betrayal and court politics, which that was really fun. The setting was really fun to me. Again, I thought it was really easy to read, fast-paced, bingeable, but I did think it was way too long. I believe this is like 700 something pages, and for a lot of it I did kind of feel like, okay, where's this going? This has been kind of repetitive. We're going back and forth. Number one, it just was too long. And then the second thing that kind of bothered me was Kat and the way that she treated Bastian, and some of the things that she did I was just not a fan of. But again, I do recommend this. It was easy to read. It is very bingeable, like a guilty pleasure type of romantasy book with a really fun setting and just some unique elements in it. I did end up rating this, I think 4 stars. Just like a good 4 stars. So yeah, again, I recommend this. You get a shadow daddy in this. Bastian is a shadow daddy, so we love that. It is spicy. There are court politics, lots of betrayal, like I said. I do eventually think that I will continue and read book 2. I have no inclination to do so right now based on all the other series that I'm in the middle of that I am feeling more of an inclination towards. So I do recommend it. It was a fun time. Next, I started another reading blog. So the last 3 books that I'm going to talk about were also in my most recent reading blog. Go watch that if you haven't already to see my in-depth thoughts. So I'm going to try to keep these ones brief. But the next 2 books that I picked up back to back were Saving 6 and Redeeming 6 by Chloe Walsh. These are books 3 and 4 in the Boys of Tommen series. And these 2 books follow Joey Lynch. The first 2 books follow Johnny and Shannon, and I loved those as well. I believe I also gave those both 5 stars or really close. Keeping 13 was definitely a 5-star book. And these are really heavy, traumatic books, so check your triggers, but I do highly recommend them because they are so good. I feel like you get so close to the characters because they are very much written in like a character study kind of a way. There's lots of drama between friends, and there's lots of, you know, longing and tension in between the love interests. And you just get this really good found family feeling. All of these, they're technically, I think, high schoolers. They call it like first year, second year, third year, because these are set in Ireland. So you're following, in the first ones, Johnny, who is a rugby player, and Shannon Lynch. Now the second two books follow Joey, which is the older brother of Shannon. And the Lynch family, they do not have a good home life. And there are really hard things, again, in these books. So just be aware of that. But wow, the emotions that these books pull out of me, I can't even explain to you how much I love these books and these characters and this world. And I can foresee myself rereading these in the future. These were both infinity stars to me. Go watch my reading vlogs. Actually, I do have a reading vlog for Binding and Keeping 13 as well. And then my most recent vlog, like I said, had these in it. I have no words for how good these books are. Highly recommend, but check your triggers because they are hard to read. Like, I'm surprised that these are in the YA section because of how many bad things and really hard, mature things these characters have to go through, especially Joey. Like, I thought the first two books were hard to read. Joey Lynch, the man that he is, I love him so much. I want to give him a big hug. So far, these are my favorite books out of the series, Joey's story, and they follow him and his girlfriend Aoife. And Aoife, I am an Aoife stan. Again, said this in my vlog. I will take no criticism of Aoife. I know a lot of people, not a lot of people, but some people really think that she's like got jealousy issues and kind of nitpick her character. But the way that she goes to war for Joey in these books, and she is there for him, ride or die, she's there through thick and thin. She really puts herself in the middle of his crazy, horrible life, is the reason that, you know, he makes it through. And it's just such a powerful story that I will remember forever. Like, it's very, very poignant, very memorable, and I will be rereading these. And I cannot also wait to read Taming 7, which is Gibbsy's story. And I've been waiting for that forever. Love those. Those were my favorite reads of the entire month of February. And I had a lot of 5 stars. Those for sure are the standouts. And then the last book that we picked up in that vlog in February was Metal Slinger by Rachel Schneider. This is book 1 in the Fire and Metal series, and I believe this is the only one that's out currently. I had heard nothing but raving reviews about this book when I picked it up, and that's obviously why I bought it and why I really was excited to read it. And I ended up giving this a 3.75. I was between a 3.75 and a 4 stars, but looking back, I think it really is more of a 3.75 for me. It's enjoyable, fast, bingeable. I recommend it because it is a fun romantasy, and you get like a, not quite pirates, but it almost feels like that. It almost gives me the feelings of the Ever King, but I think I liked the Ever King better. I don't know if the reason that I didn't love this as much as other people was because, again, I was in a little bit of maybe a reading slump at the time. Maybe it was right book, wrong time. All I know is I didn't feel super connected to these characters while reading this. Again, I read it very quickly. I enjoyed myself. It was fun. It's a silly, goofy, fun time, but there wasn't anything that made me think like, wow, this is a 5 star, you know? So yeah, this follows Bryn, and she is part of the Alaha people, and the Alaha people are kind of banished out to sea. There's the Kenta and the Alaha, and the Kenta are kind of, I think of them as the mainland people, and they have banished the Alaha for reasons that you find out later in the book. And so you're following Bryn as she goes to the Kenta market that happens, I think it's once a year, and only a select group of people get to go to this market to get the yearly supplies for their people. And so this is a really, really big deal, and they have to be careful when they go into this market to act a certain way so that they don't gain too much attention from the Kenta, and like, it can be dangerous for them. But obviously some shenanigans go down, and they end up having to flee the Kenta market and go back to their land, which is out in the sea. And they live in this, like, to me it seems like a tree type fortress over top of the ocean. Don't know if I was getting that visualization correct, but that's kind of what I was picturing in my mind. So the Alaha flee, and then one of the soldiers that she met while she was at the market ends up kind of following her, and some obvious dramatic things ensue, and you just follow her journey. And I don't know what else I can say without really spoiling anything, but just know that it's a romantasy. Like, it's a fun, spicy little romantasy. Enemies to lovers. You've got some fun settings and visualization. My camera's about to die, so I should probably end this. 0.75. Do I recommend it? Yeah. But it wasn't my favorite, and that might be an unpopular opinion. So if you're interested in this, definitely pick it up for yourself and see what your thoughts are on it. I think that's all I'm gonna say on this because I don't really have any thoughts on it. That brings us to the end of my February wrap up. Like I said, I read 9 books and had 1 DNF and a lot of 5-star reads. I think I ended up I had like 5 5-star reads, which is insane in the month of February. So yeah, I am beyond happy with how my reading month went. I would love to know how your guys' reading months were. What did you read in February? What was your favorite or favorites of February? Let me know in the comments. I always love to hear from you guys. And yeah, if you've watched this far, you've seen me fumble through these reviews, thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you. If you do like these videos, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so that you never miss any content from me in the future. And yeah, again, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you so much, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye!